morning, and we are doing another episode of TheGamersTakes, episode 18, presented by no one, since I don't have a sponsor still. Today's interesting topic is when you need to start fighting a match, what is happening. Today's topic is based off coaching. Coaching has been popularized around sports, preferably athletic sports, basketball, football, baseball, etc. You go list everything. But it has been going into eSports these last couple of years. Noticeably, I'm probably guessing started at the start of the 2010s decade, maybe with League of Legends and all that. But we will kind of talk about coaching with a Rocket League coach. I try to find a coach who actually coach. So let our guest introduce himself, then we'll kind of get going.
Hello, my name is Yuridan. I've been coaching Rocket League for about 3 years now, since the game came out. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first thing is kind of not based off kind of the coaching topic, it's the opening topic. There has been rumors surfacing around Psychonics, the publisher for Rocket League, that they're introducing a franchise league for Rocket League. What do you think about that? If you need more explanation of franchising, I'll probably just explain for you real quick. Franchising is you pay in a buy. It's like regular sports where it's kind of city based, or franchise like you pay in a set buy-in, you keep your spot forever, and it basically the reason franchising exists is to try to make it more media based, television wise, have more support. So that has been kind of rumored going around. What do you kind of think about franchising in Rocket League?
It's not something that I personally think would be a good fit, at least not right now, for the competitive system in Rocket League. Currently, a lot of the power is in the players' hands instead of in the organization's hands, which is pretty good when it comes to like roster moves and things like that. Just making sure players are taken care of properly. Franchising removes a lot of that and opens up a lot of predatory practices for organizations to do. Just given how small of a community Rocket League currently is right now, I don't really think many people, other than the companies that stand to make money off of it, are particularly interested in franchising for the esport. But I do trust Psyonix to make sure that if it is something they move into, they do it properly and do it in a way that will still protect the players.
I just the reason I just heard about it like a couple days ago, and I was like, wow, that's kind of shocking to hear. And I think overall it's interesting going with a franchise model, but the problem is I think this is a hard game to kind of have your chance of getting into, like, make into the pro scene. I know you do have relegation, like, you do have those relegation in a season. If you have franchising, you don't really include too much of a player base, like new players coming in from amateur teams, or like from even like former pro players. Like I think, what is kind of the top scene of, like, what region do you think is like the top right now?
Well, there's RLCS, which is currently 8 teams. It's expanding to 10 next
no, sorry,
season.
what region? What region do you think is kind of the best right now? Like, geography-wise?
That's honestly a hard question to answer, because it's so close between North America and EU. I mean, like, every season there have been, like, high-level teams from both regions. Oceania and South America are starting to get there.
I don't know, it'd be interesting. I think even that, the Oceanic, and like it's kind of hard because you have region locks and all that. I think that's gonna kind of be difficult, so it's not like world based. Kind of like League of Legends does that, but Call of Duty and Overwatch don't do that, so it's gonna be kind of hard. But especially I think the big thing is just the small player base, just kind of how hard it is to kind of get into the league. Although you do have new teams entering every season, new players, fresh faces, but I don't think it's just enough because it's just 6 players, 6 maybe high chance of 6 new players joining in. It's not easy still, but hopefully, again, it's what Psychonics wants to do. So first question I have for you is, what got you into becoming a Rocket League coach in the first place?
Well, I'd spent some time coaching hockey teams, just kind of on an amateur level, so just small clubs in my area. And I played the prequel game that had come out a couple of years prior to Rocket League. So I had experience with the game and the way Rocket League plays. I had experience just coaching in general. Enjoyed it. Figured I'd help my friends get a little bit better at the game, and that just kind of worked its way towards me doing it at a higher and higher level until now.
So how come you didn't want to be? You were not interested in the pro, like actually become a pro player?
I am
Be
not good enough to be a pro player. It's more of a those who can't do teach kind of situation.
Oh, I thought, a lot. I'll kind of talk about it later, but I thought it would kind of be shocking. Like, a lot of these. I thought we could see in the assistants, like, a lot of these coaches do become our former pro players.
Hmm.
Next question I have for you, is what is your daily routine in coaching your Rocket League teams, or team in the play? Like, what was your daily routine? How day in the life of a Rocket League coach?
Alrighty, so you wake up, and usually you have about 15 DMs just waiting for you of 5-minute replays. So each match in Rocket League is 5 minutes. And typically I will review the replay from each individual player's perspective. So we're now up to 15 minutes of analysis, which is low. It's not actually 15 minutes, but and then from there, I do an overall, and then I do from the opponent's perspective. So it usually takes me around 2.5 hours per replay. So from one tournament, it can take me several days to work through all of the replays. Once I have that done, I can approach each player individually and give them independent feedback. So let's say I'm working with you and I notice a specific habit you have. I can kind of help you work through that. And then after that, I go through with the team and I help them with their team habits. So, particularly that comes down to like passing and just general defensive structure. On top of that, there's all of the mentality coaching that goes on. So just making sure they're in a good headspace while they're playing. Because tilt is gonna lose you games a lot faster in a game like Rocket, where momentum can sway in a matter of seconds.
Anyone else? Do you do like scrims and all that?
I don't handle any of that. That's up to the team's manager. My only focus is just making sure they're ready to play when they're playing.
So I'm curious, are you currently coaching a team?
Yes.
So what, I'm curious what org, or is it just an org that, like, what was, like, would you consider them, like, decent enough for, like, the rival series?
I would.
Like, are they
coach...
coming up, are they up and coming up players?
Yeah,
Like,
I coached 303 eSports, and they had a team in PUBG's, like, their equivalent of RLRS. So they're like promotion level. And we were close to RLRS this season, but we lost a key series and didn't quite make it. But we were like 2 series away from qualifying. So we're looking forward to next season's chance.
So you picked up a totally new roster? Oh.
No, we're working with the same roster.
Oh, still captain?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, I'm checking something. So next question I have for you is, what strategy slash oh, I'm gonna let go, but that's okay. What strategy slash improvements do you try to incorporate with the team, like, especially in a game like Rocket League, where I feel like there isn't strategy, just follow the ball? Like, do you guys have like set strats, like how you want to attack, like try to attack the goal, or like play defense?
I wouldn't say that it's just follow the ball. A lot of it is so when you're looking at a
That's
game
my
like
opinion. I just
soccer or
that's
football,
yeah.
there's a lot of strategy with how you're placing your car in regards to the ball and your opponents. So it's less like, in American football, you have a specific route that you're going to run while you're waiting for your quarterback to decide who they want to pass to or if they want to just scramble. In soccer, you would have like your one of your forwards would be moving
That's
themselves in
no.
a way that would zone the defender so that your person on the ball has a more advantageous route to the goal, or they're able to get a clearer center. So a lot of it has to do with where you're positioning yourself in regards to your teammates, the ball, and the opponent. So there's a lot of very in-depth, just mental analysis, visual analysis, trying to guide your opponents to do a certain thing based off of where you're placing yourself, so it gives your teammate a better chance. So there's a lot of crossover between soccer and there's a lot of crossover between hockey, but it's not
Oh,
quite
so
like
just this kind of positioning, a lot more
mhm,
positioning.
yeah. So
I'm
it's
gonna
not
kind of
quite like
uh,
hockey. I'm sorry, it's not quite like basketball or American football, just because it's too fast paced for that.
that it could be. Well, yeah, I know it's gonna be slow. It's not gonna be a lot of like consistent scoring and all that. I'm gonna kind of explain what and I know I'm not a Call of Duty coach. I'm just gonna kind of, since I'm a Call of Duty player, I'm gonna kind of explain what I think a coach does with their strategies and improvements. I think so you can hear from different perspectives instead of fully Rocket League at the moment. So basically, they kind of. I'm actually gonna talk about today's schedule too, since I forgot about that. So they do kind of 6 hours of scrim. I think from what I heard from players, they kind of do 6 hours of scrims where they kind of run maps over and over again with different professional teams. So they run like we have game hardpoint. It's like King of the Hill, domination. You got free flags, search and destroy. You plant the bomb. You only have one life. So they kind of just cycle through maps for about 6 hours. They kind of between maps they kind of talk about what they did wrong and with the team, and then they have like a couple hours of VOD review, and then it's kind of just pick up lobbies. That's kind of all they do. So it's just kind of a lot of practicing with the scrims and all that. I'm just curious, is your scrim time like I heard that from other teams, like how long is your scrims time? Like from I know you're not watching it, like what do you kind of think the average scrims time is?
Usually each scrim block is about an hour, and most top teams will do 3 blocks a day. Just because the analysis time takes such a long time for Rocket League, there usually isn't enough time for them to continue to do. Like they could do more, but it's really important to have those scrims analyzed instead of just having scrims that go completely under the radar from your coach. So there's usually about 3 scrim blocks a day, and then there will be a lot of mechanics practice, so a lot of time in like free play or a lot of time in ranked. Is basically treated like free play for high level players. Just practicing mechanics, making sure they're really solid with their touches and stuff like that.
I guess it's just a lot of how you can improve your, like Call of Duty is just kind of, it's really again the game is like fully developed, like again this Call of Duty series is there for like more than a decade already, so they kind of just probably all they have to practice. They kind of, if they want free play, they kind of just do pick up lobbies like tens just for the hell of it, like just so they can improve their aim strategy. Mostly happens in search, but a lot of people they do some just kind of mechanics wise. I think it's just kind of knowing how to like they just go in a private match by themselves. They got 5 bots. They see how the spawns work. Um, Although they probably be a lot better if they did against actual teams, but or they actually practice shooting, like just kind of improving their aim and all that by kind of shooting bots, make sure they're on target. That's kind of which I kind of consider the free time there. So next question I have for you is: do you try to incorporate bonding activities with the players you coach? Um, the weights with the players you coach instead of them just playing for business purposes?
Yeah, I think.
Like just
Go ahead.
continue. Sorry.
A lot of the benefit to coaching a team is you can help them grow both as individuals and players. So kind of keeping things light, especially when they've just come off of a tough loss, is important for helping them handle losses. Um, so just finding fun ways to help them continue to work on like their mechanics and their decision making. So it's not just purely nose to the grindstone all day. It really helps them grow faster and helps them take losses a little easier. So I think that's actually a very important part of coaching, regardless of what esport it is.
Now I'm just curious. Did the team you coach, did they actually play together? Like, do they play together like kind of consistently? Like, even if it's not scrims time.
Mm-hmm.
And do you kind of play with the players?
I
Just
don't play with
curious.
them very often, but I do play with them fairly frequent. Like, not regularly, but frequently. Um, they, however, play for fun all the time.
Oh, okay. Call of Duty, I think. It's probably the same thing. They just, I don't know how to really do it. I think it's just kind of pubs lobbies again. Like they kind of do pubs or you do like tens. But again, that's not really playing together with teams since it's kind of random pickup teams. I think it's, I'm probably gonna say it's pretty similar to how kind of went directly. Yeah, they do play together, but it's not consistent. Like, well, with the code, like which you allow as a coach, that's probably just not consistent. Um, Next question is, so there's analysts. They kind of analyze gameplay. It's kind of like kind of similar to coaching, except it's a lot more in depth, more strategy like approach. It's like analyzing the weak points of a team. What do you think of analysts coming into the mix of kind of? Sorry, let me get the question. What do you think of analysts coming into the mix? Do you think that the role is pointless, especially that's what kind of a head coach does? Like if your team had an analyst.
Um, I think for the state of
You kind
Rocket
of
League right now, a quality coach can handle that just by themselves. We don't need a large coaching staff for one team. Um, I think if higher level Rocket League is expanded more and there are more teams that are relevant to the scene, you might need more people on staff, but given that for any team in RLRS or RLCS, there's really only 18 teams you need to worry about right now, and then next season is going to be 20. Like, that's the way that Rocket League works. Most of the teams end up playing very similar, because it's you develop into basically one meta, and so you don't have to really worry too much about how. So, like in CS:GO, you might have um, a team that has a really, really high quality opper, and they're going to really try to focus and build around that particular player. Um, you can't really do that as much in Rocket League because, and it's going to kind of sound counterintuitive, but the individual impact of one player is much, much higher in Rocket League than I think it is for other games. So, for example, if you have one player that's not quite up to par for the rest of your team, it's going to show pretty easily. So all three of your players have to pretty much be perfect all the time. Because one player can lose the entire match consistently. Um,
um.
and so you're not going to
Oh, sorry,
have
Jim.
very much variation in how the game is played, because you're going to have the generally accepted best way to play the game. And you can make small adjustments there, like some teams prefer a more grounded playstyle than others, but for the most part, the meta game is going to be pretty similar across the board. So in-depth analysis of each individual team isn't as important. It's more game to game and how you're playing on the day, and making adjustments there, which that can easily be handled by one person.
Yeah, I think for Rock League, I wouldn't like analysts. This doesn't really seem like it. I think because it's not it's just random a lot of times. You just it's not like it's a consistent pattern. Like where you can
I don't know if I would
identify
agree with you
strat.
there.
Well, just I don't know. It's just kind of how you can adapt to the situation. That's kind of really it. I think the head coach can just kind of analyze how kind of positioning is overall. I don't think you kind of really need like just another extra person kind of look at that. I think the head coach can just kind of work with that overall. For Call of Duty, I'm gonna say it has been growing, especially with the franchise league coming in. I think analysts a lot of times, kind of really, kind of how analysts does in Call of Duty is it just kind of analyze, what kind of how they play on the map. Yeah, it's not like they kind of analyze the weaknesses, the strengths, you know, how their positioning kind of works. So it's kind of similar, like, you know, it's kind of what the coach does, but coach kind of gives up with strats and like the offensive side and like how to adapt to that. But analysts just kind of analyze every team, see what the weaknesses are. I don't know, it's just kind of another pointless, I think, for Call of Duty, and kind of overall, I think analyst is not really a role that's needed, although it would be kind of nice to kind of expose, like, I think maybe for Call of Duty it works a lot better in Rocket League, but I think just for analyzing, I just kind of your roles, I think coach can probably spend a lot of time doing that. It just matters on, you know, what the team prefers, if they want analysts or not, you know. But, you know, a lot of teams do have that. It just matters in preference, which a lot of team, I think, maybe not in like a high intense, like something involves a lot more money would kind of involve like a lot more coaching staff in regards to, you know, analysts, assistant coaches, head coaches, and all that. Next question. This is gonna be kind of your honest opinion. Or it should be. What makes a good head coach in esports, and what makes a bad head coach in esports?
I would say
We'll start with good first.
a good head coach would be able to identify when their players need more personal help, really. Because anyone can sit there all day and purely focus on the game. But like I mentioned earlier, I think a coach's head job is making sure the players are growing. And that's not just purely related to how the game is going. Because a lot of times there are, I mean, this is esports, it's a lot of kids. There's a lot of people in high school, it's a lot of younger folk. So you have to really help them mature before you can really focus on the business aspect of things. And so just being able to identify when they need that guiding hand, as opposed to just constantly being focused on the match, the tournament, whatever's going on in the game. Because small things like that can help them focus better on whatever it is that's the direct focus. I think poor coaches are too absorbed in the game itself instead of the people.
I would I would kind of go with the same. I think kind of adding, yeah, I think just kind of spending a good coach kind of spends time with the players, see what the problem is, help them improve overall individually, you know, as a team too, try to, and also kind of as a good hike, like just make sure everything's going well, make sure to like not having any problems that could affect their overall gameplay, behind, like off the scene. I think it's kind of really important. I think also another thing good head coach has to do is just trying to be dedicated towards coaching. Like again, talk about, you have to spend a lot of time watching VOD review, studying strats and all that. You got to make sure that's consistently happening. Like you can't, like you just can't come into the coach role and just kind of watch them and just don't like give like don't give opinions on the mistakes from the previous day or yesterday, or tell them that. You just tell them to kind of play and tell them the strats afterward. It doesn't really kind of help the team improve. Well, kind of like tell them after the game, yeah, that's probably what you need, but kind of just not improve, like just not trying to couple with new strategies, new plans, and how to attack, attack and win. So that's a thing that coaches don't do. Coaches should do, and bad coaches, it's kind of opposite, like not spending time with your player, not spend time with your players, only caring about the game instead of personal feelings and kind of not being dedicated to coaching, just kind of letting it go. So next question I have for you, whatever. Um, do you think coaches need to start? I kind of we actually answered this already. I'm just curious, how much more do you need from it? Do you think coaches need to start acting as mentors, especially for the young up and coming esports players? Kind of
I mean, I
you're
think
going.
that's a pretty vital job for any sort of position administratively in esports, so your managers should also be doing that. Um, I mean, you have like 15-year-olds who are professional athletes in a video game. They're not trained to handle what comes with that. When you have some kids who, I mean, this is their first time being in a public speaking environment, you hand them a microphone in front of 100,000 people, and you expect them to give a quality interview. That's probably not going to happen unless they have a quality mentor behind them, like be that their coach or their manager, helping them understand what their role is and how to manage that effectively. Um, it's kind of related, but I'm hoping that more orgs get like sports psychologists involved, just due to the nature of the time of the life that many players are entering the esports scene. It's often very difficult for them to approach matters in a mature manner. Um, I mean, you can go back in Call of Duty's history and see a lot of examples of that, with some teams falling apart that were doing well just due to interpersonal issues that weren't handled properly because the players didn't have the resources to know how to manage that kind of issue. Um, and so yeah, I think mentorship is very important in esports, more so than regular sports, because you have, I mean, by the time you're a professional, physical sport player, you're older. You've already dealt with a lot of interpersonal issues just with your life. You're going through puberty with esports. It's not going to be pretty unless you have someone there to help you with it.
Yeah, I kind of think the same thing. There's lot, there's a lot of people who do like the coaches that's kind of making sure everything's right, but I think also psychiatrists, kind of mental therapists. That's been increasing in the role. Um, but like if that was not the case, like just yeah, you're right. Like that, we do have that in hands. That's been growing with the health specialists coming to the mix. But do you think if that was not available, just say it didn't like that was not available, you think that needs to be happening more? Where coach
Definitely.
has to take that kind of like health therapy, like kind of that health therapy role?
As best as they can. I wouldn't recommend that somebody who's not qualified try to be a therapist, but I mean, there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong
I
with
know.
just giving advice
I
where you
know. It's
can.
just say in case it's assisted. Well, yeah, that matters on. Well, the team has money. Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the things. If you have that money available, might as well spend it because you're gonna. It's just kind of a stressful job overall because you don't know if you're gonna be employed or unemployed the next day. So just kind of finding out their weaknesses, making sure there's nothing that's affecting the gameplay overall mentally. To make a big difference. Speaking on the mental side. The next question I have for you is: would you like which job would you consider more stressful, esports player or a esports coach?
By far the player. 100% the player.
Why is that?
Um,
Why
so I
not the
mean,
esports coach?
you have all of the pressures on the player. I mean, they have to constantly be working on themselves to make sure they're on top of their game. I mean, my job's to sit there and tell them what to do to get better. That's a lot easier than putting in the time to get better, having all the pressure on me to win the games, I don't lose my job if, someone else, because it's a lot harder to realize when someone's a better coach than someone else looking in. Like the players will know with work with the coach, but a lot easier you can tell, like, oh, this guy is a lot more consistent taking his shots and he handles pressure better in clutch situations. You don't have that kind of comparison for coaches. The only way you really know that kind of stuff is when you actually work with a coach. So there's a lot more job security in coaching, just simply based off of how you look at coaches. Um, Players, I mean, let's say you're not playing well for 2 weeks, you now have to worry about, like, oh, is my team just gonna cut me? Because they've been playing with some other dude a lot recently. And so I think there's a lot more stress on players just because they have to be on top of their game all the time. Otherwise, I mean, you've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen it in, like, Call of Duty, where, you have
Yeah.
one team that's been dominant for seasons, and then they lose to a team that's not too great, and everyone's like, oh, they suck now, they've fallen off, they're trash, their reign is over, they're not going to win anything from here on out, like, just because they lost one game. You never hear anything like that about coaches.
Yeah, I think it's, well, I agree with that. It's just kind of, you got to dedicate a lot more time into improving because, again, the coach, you're not playing that much, but I'm just kind of like, you're just kind of analyzing, giving them strats and all that. So, do you kind of feel like like, it's stressful for you?
Um, no, I
Or
wouldn't say it's stressful. It's something I enjoy doing.
did you
There's not a
feel
whole lot
like
of stress to it. It's a big time drain, but I wouldn't call it stressful.
is there points where you felt like in the last couple of years, that you feel like in the coaching role, like when you're coaching, it's like, I don't know. I just don't feel like doing it today, or just I don't feel like. Have you
Um,
ever felt that,
I mean,
or
yeah,
is it just never?
I think anyone doing anything full time has those kinds of thoughts and feelings from time to time. I mean, no matter how much you love your job, there's gonna be days where you just kind of don't want to deal with it, especially when it is such a large time obligation. So I'd be surprised
Yeah,
if there were many people who put in the same amount of hours that, are happy with it day in, day out. I mean, you see streamers who they will say anytime you ask them they love streaming more than anything, but they still have to take breaks because they get burnt out. It happens with any job like this where there's a massive time obligation.
do you try to actually take breaks when your team is like just kind of like an off season type of, like, is it like an off season type of move where you just
As far as coaching goes, there really isn't much of an off season because off season time is where you do a lot of your um, basically meta analysis. So that's where you're working on. So there's the generally accepted meta, which is the understood way to play the game. Off season is the best time to work on ways to try to beat that meta and establish a new one, because there's nothing on the line while you're trying weird things out in scrims. So I'd say that off season is honestly a lot more stressful on the coaching side than during the season. So I wouldn't say I'd get time off, but I do focus on separating my personal stuff from Rocket League stuff, and that helps me not get burnt out. And a lot of that comes to
oh yeah, I think
not
yeah,
feeling the need to be doing Rocket League if I'm sitting at my computer.
makes sense. Next question I have for you is, this is kind of based off money, like kind of a little more based off money. What do you think of some of the head coaches being hired to? Wait, sorry. Next. That's a couple questions about money and about that. I don't know. I thought about that. Um, what do you think of some of the head coaches being hired today having no experience in competing at the highest level in their respective game? Just say for your Rocket League and for me, kind of Call of Duty. Um, instead of hiring retired pros who compete at the highest level of coach, like hiring, what do you think of that about that? It's kind of similar to
Um,
your situation,
I I wouldn't say
where
that,
you,
that's accurate because I was playing at the highest level when the game came out.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Um,
but just like just for other like esports and all that.
I don't see a problem with it as long as they're able to actually do the job. I think there's a bit too much respect placed on former pros. A biggest aspect to coaching is being able to teach. So you might know the game well, but if you can't teach the game to someone, it doesn't really matter how well you know the game. Um, so I would rather have, let's say, a former pro as a like an advisor in an advisory role, or a, you know, not really a head coach position, so much as someone who knows how to really teach the concepts. Um, so let's say I was working with a team, and we needed somebody to come in with to really help them with mechanics because I'm not as mechanically gifted as. I shouldn't phrase it like that. Gifted is the wrong term to think about it as. I'm not as solid
Skilled.
mechanically. Um, so we might want to bring in another player who is a lot more skilled mechanically than I am to help them figure out the minor aspects of their touches. Um, but as far as a head coach role, I don't think that just because someone's a former pro, that puts them in a good spot to be a head coach. I think we need to start holding coaches to a little higher standard than that, instead of just practically handing those positions to former players, because they oftentimes don't know what they're doing and would not make a good coach without training for that role.
Well, what is it like in a rec league scene, like with the coaching, like with like who's been coaching? Like, has it been
Um,
a lot of former players or
it's
just kind of?
starting to move towards former players, but it's a lot of it has started as people like me who have experience coaching other sports. Like I have experience coaching hockey, so I know how to coach. I've done it for years. Um, and I played at the higher level when the game came out before there really was a pro scene. Um, and so I know how the game works. People know how the game works. They trust that I know how the game works, and they know that I know how to coach. So they know that when I'm asking them to do something, it's because it will benefit them. We're starting to see more players retire, and some of them are going towards coaching roles. Um, and I'm not for Rocket League so far. The players that have done that have been players that I personally trust in that role. Um, I know that they know what they're doing. I know they understand the game at a deep level, and I know they're capable of teaching that. But there are a lot of amateur level coaches that you'll see in any sport that, I mean, they're in it just to make a quick buck. They're not, they don't really. A big factor is really the passion about teaching the game, and you're not really going to have that unless you are passionate about the game enough to do it for free, which is weird, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody do it for free if they have the ability to get paid for it. But people who aren't good enough to coach higher level teams, charging for it usually leads to a lot lower level coaching and a misunderstanding of how the coaching ecosystem works in esports. Kind of went off
So
topic
what
there.
do you?
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's kind of needed. Just kind of explain off the Call of Duty example. I think I'm gonna kind of go different on you. I think it's kind of better to have that former pro. I think it sucks because they have no prior coaching experience in like a different scene. Like you coach hockey. You know, you know how to, you know, you coach athletes, somewhat. Well, athletes turning pro athletes. So you kind of know how to handle that coach role, unlike like someone who doesn't know how to do it, which I think is fine. It makes sense. You want someone who knows, who has experience as a coach, maybe not in the video game system, but like the video game world, but in like a different scene, like especially regular sports. which is kind of more, well, kind of, I'm just gonna say a lot, decent amount more strategy. And it's if that situation he does that, yeah, that's great. But they kind of hire a lot of teams hire people out of nowhere, which I never heard of, without kind of explaining why they've been coaching. But we'll forget about that now. I think for former pros coaching, I think it kind of creates a bonding, like kind of more of a familiarity. Like they know each other, they played against each other. They kind of there's a more of a friendship into it because they actually competed against each other. So they kind of relate more to the player, and they're gonna be more interested, more tuned in to listening to them. Well, again, they're gonna listen to coach anyways, but they're kind of more fascinated. They're gonna seem like they're really interested in listening to you than just at the start and maybe at the and the whole time. And then it's gonna be kind of more of a rough patch with kind of and a coaching with that. Well, I kind of repeated all the same things, but I think for coaching overall, I think again you can put him in an advisory role, which is fine. I think just the big thing is just kind of a bonding experience. I'll give you a couple examples just for anyone who watches this later, Call of Duty fans. Actually, can you give me a Rocket League example?
Of a former
Like
player
who
turned
actually
coach?
succeeded? Like who kind of actually
Fireburner
succeeded with
is
it?
currently coaching Cloud9, which I wouldn't call that success right now. But, there's Fireburner for Cloud9, there's Sizz for Rogue. Both of those are RLCS teams currently.
Actually, Sis coaches NRG.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Oh, he just
he was coaching Rogue
that's okay.
for a brief period, but yeah, he moved to Energy.
What was kind of who's the most successful out of that, or is it just kind of starting up what you're seeing?
Um, I don't think Sizz has been with Energy long enough for him to have had a big impact with them.
But
But
if they win like the season 8 championship,
I
you
don't
think
think he's
that?
been with them long enough for him to have that big of an impact.
Oh,
Especially given how long Garrett and Justin have been playing together. I think a lot of the benefit that he's going to bring to that team is mentality side, um, especially with Turbo. Because Turbo has a history of taking the game a little too seriously, and Sis is very good at not letting you take the game seriously. Um, so I think he'll definitely be a big benefit on the mentality side. But for this season, I don't think he's really helping with the nitty gritty analytics right now. I'm sure he's helping, but I don't think he's making a massive impact. I think we'll see that impact going forward into future seasons.
I guess I'm gonna give my example. So there's Call of Duty player who just say we can start at Black Ops 4 season, not Modern Warfare, because there hasn't been too much reveal of coaches on Modern Warfare yet. But basically it was a player named Facento. He was basically average at I would consider him like he was not top tier. He was not the scum dashy Crim 6 of the world where he was that dominant, but he had a kind of a great personality. Like he was very he was an IGL. So he was he was noticeably good with his IGL role. So he joined a team called United. And that team was having internal problems because there was a big fight between two players. Anyone knows that Clayster and JCap, they were having big fights. They're like arguing at each other. The other coach at the time, Saint, wasn't really doing too much, and he was was not helping the team win a championship. So they put in Facento, a former player, who previously he started the season. He left Evil Geniuses, the Call of Duty team, at March, and he retired. He came from playing. He came in as a came in to coach in United in April, and during a 5-month impact process, he won two championships. He coached and won 2 championships with the team, which was CDL Miami and COD champs. So that was kind of one of the cases where it actually turned a success story, where he was a great IGL and he kind of helped the team, the team who had all the pieces, just make sure they can win. overall. So that's kind of one of my examples. There's been a couple more players who've been going to coaching roles. TP, who was a coach for Optic Gaming. He was COD champs. Um, Another player who joined the London Royal Ravens, Joe. He was a former COD player. So a lot of these people who are becoming coaches now were actually kind of coming into the mix like kind of the last 2 seasons. They were like they're known players, so again, it's kind of more prevalent in the COD scene with having like I think like there's not a lot of teams who don't have coaches who are not like who didn't play at the highest level. So it's kind of different, like a little more different than probably a lot more other teams, maybe like Rocket League. Well, I don't know. I actually forget about what I said there, but it's kind of more prevalent in the COD scene where you have former coaches play. I'm sorry, former players coach. So next question I have for you is, could we see an increase with coaches' salaries in the near future, especially in the six figure range, 6 digit figure range, or are you still gonna have to work on a job that is
Um,
like coaching?
I would expect that coaching salaries improve, just due to the importance for team success that a coach has. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. A lot of organizations are run by investment companies, um, who hold a lot more say in how salaries are determined. Um, that is one benefit to franchising, is those companies no longer get a massive voice in who gets paid how much. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen soon for Rocket League, just because of the way investment companies tend to see esports. They don't really want to pay their people a whole lot, if at all. Denial. Um, and so it's a lot of it is just waiting for scenes to develop a little bit more and have more success, like in the style of Optic and Phase, where they're companies that are built by former players who understand what it's like to be a player. Not saying they don't take predatory practices. I don't know. I haven't played or worked for either organizations. Um, but you see a lot more respect given to the players in situations like that, where the company is owned and operated by people who've been there before. So your 100 Thieves, your FaZe, your Optic, your Chaos Esports, stuff like that.
So, I'm just curious on your situation. Do you work in a job?
No.
So you're fully dedicated to Rocket League
Yep.
coaching?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know if I should I don't know if you should leak salaries or not. It's your choice if you want to reveal this, but it's private information if you want to reveal your salary, but it's your choice. How much do you make per year or per month
Um,
per se?
I'm gonna say
Again, it's your choice if you want to
enough.
say it.
I make enough. That's gonna be my official statement. Make enough to get by. Enough that I don't have to worry about bills.
No, I'm just curious. How old are you?
I'm 22.
Oh, so just kidding. So can I have you worked on a job before becoming
Yeah.
a full-time Rocket League coach?
Yeah, I've worked a lot. Used to work in construction.
So you feel like if it, especially with esports going, you think it's gonna kind of fully happen where you don't have to worry about working on a job for the rest of your life. Just me, you can get to that six-figure salary range for coaches.
That's
Do you
weird.
think it's gonna
It's
happen? Okay, just ask in the next 6 months. Just say esports keep growing. Do you think coaches are ever gonna get a six-figure salary?
Do I think they will ever? Yeah, 100%.
But
Do I
not
think
in
it's
next
smart
in 6 months.
for players and coaches to try to make that their career? No, I think esports has a very short career span, even for coaches. Um, because players are going to want to work with, like you mentioned earlier, they're going to want to work with former pros. After a while, you can't really take your former pro experience and call that valid experience for coaching. Um, because it would have just been too long. The game would have changed so much since the last time that you were playing at the top that, yeah, you understand the lifestyle, but you can't really bring that experience to coaching after a certain period of time. So players are going to want to move towards more recent former pros who understand the game a little bit better, especially as resources develop to help those kinds of players who are trying to transition into coaching or managing learn how to do that effectively. Um, so I think more important than relying on coaching salaries or relying on player salaries to reach higher levels, I would urge
You're just
players and
managing a coach.
coaches to start to learn more of the business side of esports and transition into that. So that would be going for like a general manager position at an org where you're basically managing the managers. Um,
That's happened. There's a couple players who've done that.
yeah,
Or a
that's where
couple
I would
coaches
want to
too.
see people try to build their careers instead of trying to hang on to, you know, coaching or managing one team and stuff like that.
Um, I think, yeah, I heard of a couple players who did go into degrees. It's a lot of times former players, they have former coaches, so with the business side, I'm just curious, are you ever going to see a seven-figure salary of a coach, like in professional sports,
Um,
in esports?
Potentially, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw it happen, but I don't think it's likely anytime soon.
I won't consider it either.
I mean, you barely see
It
seven-figure prize pools. I mean, the international is by far the most success, like the biggest prize pool, and even that's not really
35 mil.
enough to guarantee a coach a seven-figure salary.
So you think it just has to grow in the business overall?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, most orgs don't turn a profit for a long time. Unless you're one of the massive orgs that everyone knows, you're probably not making much money. Um, so it's... I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I would be surprised to see it become commonplace in the foreseeable future. I do think that
So next. Oh, sorry.
as esports gets a little more mainstream, like publication, you'll start to see it get a lot more investment, and you'll start to see salaries just rise as a whole. But that's going to be a very slow process.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's right. Just kind of try to not have the shadiness of the business come into the mix. Actually, also, you know the coach I met, Facento, the coach I mentioned, won the 2K champs. He just turned. He got. He's now joining a talent agency to try to help players make sure everything goes right with contracts and all that, and like life and all that. So there's kind of one case where it's kind of worked, but I haven't really seen too many in the Call of Duty department to where they actually turned kind of a business. Actually, Nate Shot did. Let me forget about that. Nate Shot, former Call of Duty pro, retired during the AW season 2015. Got a business degree from a college in Illinois, and founded 100 Thieves. And now you kind of know where that's kind of growing. It's one of the I think one of the more known organizations from one of the most recognizable players on that Call of Duty scene. So that's kind of one example where actually it it happens where he actually turns into a business point of view, and it kind of sparked a little bit of a growth from it, like knowing
Mm-hmm.
that big organizations can join. That's kind of the only case like where I've seen a player turn kind of a game career into like he actually did something like big with it, not like just kind of a roll. God damn it, almost scored. Oh, thank you. Um, but that's the only case I have. Next question I have for you. This is kind of something I just came up with randomly. What do you think of head coaches? So there's scenes CS:GO, Rainbow Six does this. I don't know if Overwatch does this. But coaches do stand behind their players and they kind of talk strats between rounds. Do you think that is kind of? Do you think that's kind of? I don't know. Morally, I'm not gonna say morally right in this case, but you think that's kind of that should not be allowed? Like, whatever you get coached, like, should be like basketball and hockey where you just adapt as you go. Like, you know, you just learn from what you did in practice and you just go do it in game without any kind of coaching help, or is that, you know, is that fine?
There's a
I
lot
don't know.
of
It's an odd
mid-game.
question.
There's a lot of mid-game coaching in hockey and basketball. Um, it's
I
just
don't know.
not
That's another question I
as
came up with.
easy to be directly in the player's ear. Um, but a lot of times when you see a substitution in a sport like that, that player will be sent out onto the field with a message from the coach to say, hey, start doing this, stop doing that, stuff like that. Additionally, there are a lot of physical indications that the coaches will give to the players to give them messages. Um, I honestly would say the opposite. I think that more esports need to incorporate on-stage mid-match coaching. It's where you start to see a lot more impressive higher-level play. Um, when the players don't have to worry about doing all the analysis mid-match and they can just follow the game plan and let somebody who's not under as much pressure as them handle all the thinking part and let them just do their thing, do what they do best. I think forcing players to
I,
do analysis mid-game. I'm sure there are players who are very talented at it. I'm not trying to take away from those players, but I think it definitely those players could be even better if they weren't forced to run an IGL kind of role and they were allowed to just direct the team, but direct them with the coach's game plan instead of trying to make their own game plan mid-series.
it's common. Not too common in the cards. Does Reckley do that with the? You
Not
kind of
currently in
watched.
RLCS. We did in one of the more recent Dream Hacks, which a lot of the players really liked and a lot of the viewers really liked. So I'm hoping they start to normalize that in the Rocket League scene.
COD is different. Kind of. I think it makes more. I think for games like CS:GO, where and kind of Rainbow Six is kind of one. It's kind of like a team. It's like a search. Like it's just one life per round, so it makes sense to kind of do that every other round. But if it's kind of like a respawn game, I don't think that should be happening. Like if your game has constant respawns, like Call of Duty, um, even in the Search and Destroy, which I mentioned was a one life. You know, you have one life per round. They don't do that. They don't do that in between. They kind of sit on the sidelines, and they only and they and the coaches they do show up at the games, the league matches, but they don't. I don't know because they don't really show a lot of game clips of this, but they only talk to the team like at certain times. Like they don't, you know, it's a 5 game series. The first one is hard point. First one's hard point. They don't, and then they go to search and destroy. They don't like between the hard point and search and destroy game. They don't talk to the players, and they got restrictions on that. So maybe I'm probably thinking, yeah, I think it's kind of better to kind of have that coach. I thought it was gonna. I didn't really like the idea, but kind of once you explained it, it really kind of supported the idea that should happen. I think just having them see what mistakes you make and see what you can do better for the next round, could be the big thing. As long as they're not like totally backseat gaming, which they don't allow that, because I think they mute their. I don't know I don't know how they. So they
Oftentimes
basically plug their
their
mics in.
microphones are muted,
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
prevent any sort of
Yeah.
because they can just sit there and stare at the minimap for like Call of Duty, and that would let the players focus on a lot more of what they're seeing on the field instead of the minimap. If you just have some coach just constantly saying like, "Oh, there's someone in," I don't know any Call of Duty callouts, um, just stuff like that.
Just
Like, I don't know
what
how
building?
viable that would be for Call of Duty. I don't play the game, um, but I imagine that would
Probably for Rocket League.
certainly help to have somebody constantly parroting callouts like that. And so for Rocket League, that'd be stuff like, "Oh, their last player back doesn't have any boost," in case you weren't aware, or "Oh, their net's completely open, just ping a long shot downfield, free goal." And so mid-match, especially for Rocket League, yeah, I agree. There shouldn't be any sort of communication from the coach. But in between each game, so let's say it's a best of 5 series, after game 1, give the coach a minute to, you know, converse with the players, come up with a game plan for the next match. And then
No, okay.
after that game, I say match and game interchangeably. I apologize. I know that a lot of
That's
people when
it.
they hear match, they think like the best of 5 series. Um, so yeah, between each game in a series is how it was handled for DreamHack, and I think that's a good system, especially for Rocket League. I don't know exactly how the implementation would work for Call of Duty because I don't play the game and I
They do
don't
it. They
watch the.
do it like I don't know. Imagine what's they do it. And imagine how much break they have. They go. I think they get like. I think like a 5 minute break between games. So they probably do it like between. I don't. Again, sometimes the series goes like They immediately start up, like maybe 2 minutes. So imagine they do have it, but it's just not visible.
Mhm.
Like you can't see it actively happening. Like Rainbow Six and CS:GO, they kind of do it between rounds, so you got like they have a shorter time. That's kind of a big disadvantage, but again, you have a lot of rounds to play with. You have like 15 T side rounds and 15 COD terrace rounds, so you just kind of thinking what you're gonna do, how you want to play in that round out. So it's I don't know, imagine what game you're kind of doing it in, but so that's kind of big difference right there. Next question is. Could we see a drastic growth in the amount of female esports coaches in the next couple of years? I'm going to give you two examples. I don't think, actually, I was supposed to have someone on the show who is a female coach for a Rocket League team, but Elixir, I think that was the name. So I was supposed to have her, and she was actually a female Rocket League coach. So I was like, oh, maybe that'll be an interesting question to ask. Um, so I'll give you two examples. Lylan, who coaches a Rainbow Six team, Team Vitality in Rainbow Six, and also there was Overwatch Korean Overwatch coach, who coached was assistant coach for Washington Justice named Davala. Could you see an increase in that? Like, could we see a drastic growth?
I think,
Oh shit.
especially since just gaming in general is getting a little bit more acceptable for women to be doing, because a lot of the people who are career aged right now, when they were growing up, it wasn't quite as normal for women to be taking games very seriously. Like it's kind of expected for, high school age guys, like, oh, let's go home and play Call of Duty or 2K or something. You don't really see that kind of stereotype with women, but it's starting to be a little more like acceptable and like normal for that. So I think definitely once they have more time to develop, that yeah, we definitely will see that. It's just not something that's been something they've been encouraged to do, really. It's hard for me to really talk about it because I'm not a woman, but I wouldn't be surprised to see more women in esports just as a whole, as players, as coaches, and they're just as capable as men are. We have Karma in. I wouldn't be surprised if she made RLCS next season. She's been in RLCS. She's currently in RLRS, and they have a very dominant run. They're, I think, second on the table. They're tied for first on the table, I think. But they're losing the head-to-head against the team that they're technically tied with. So they're sitting second on the table, which means they're, I think, just auto-promoting into RLCS, depending on how the end of today goes.
Yeah, I was just curious how the system. I would kind of just completed that. I kind of talk about the system. Just kind of want to talk about that. I'll continue.
So yeah, I
With
mean,
karma.
it's you're starting to see a lot more just women in gaming in general. And as they do that, they're just naturally going to get better at games. I mean, how did male esports start? Just a bunch of dudes playing games, wanted to see who was best. Okay, well, women are competitive too. So eventually, once they just spend more time doing it, which has been their barrier for entry, you're going to start seeing them a lot more. And so it's going to be, you know, pretty soon here that I would say it's fairly commonplace. I mean, we already have plenty of very talented females in all sorts of different sports. So, I mean, it's not like, basketball, where there's just an intrinsic
It's
height
split.
advantage that most men have. Men just tend to be taller. That's really important in basketball. Sure, shorter players can play well and at a high level, but I mean, it's just a little bit easier when you're taller. That's hard to deny. That
Um,
doesn't really function in esports because, I mean, you're not running around, your height doesn't matter. It's how well can you, manipulate a keyboard and mouse, or how well can you manipulate a controller.
so, could you see, like, if, you got more cases of female become coaches, okay? Just from, like, you can have a lot more of a male population, with teams and all that. Oh my god. It's giving me OCD. Um, with teams and all that. Are they going to be more respected by, like, if they become the coach, are they going to kind of be, like, more respected? Or are they kind of, like, immediately when they join? Like, they go into a new team, they just had a previous male coach, it gets fired and just said, okay, case.
I
Gets
mean,
fired. Is he going to be kind of more respected? Like, they're going to be more respected?
in general, there's gonna be your bad seeds anywhere. Um, and I think a lot of those people would be disrespectful of any anyone, regardless of gender. I do think women are probably going to struggle a little bit to
Yes,
gain respect and be
maybe.
treated with civility, just by nature of a lot of people in this industry are very young. Very young people do very silly things. Um, and so I do think their road to success is a little harder than a man would be. But I in esports you see a lot more of respect given to people when they have something behind them, like experience behind them. So once female coaches and female players and female managers are more established, I don't think that, respect is going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah, I didn't quite add it up there. Again, I think it also matters on what I think when it matters on what game you get.
Hmm.
Rocket League, I think you're gonna have a lot more of a kind of like this gonna be highly more respective. It just matters on what game genre you do. I don't know if that's gonna make a difference, but I think it could maybe if you go to Call of Duty or you go to like a game that's really toxic on this community and like kind of has a lot of like mouthy mouths talking to people, can't shut up mouths. Like I think it's gonna be harder. But if I think you go into a game like Rocket League, something that, or I don't know what a game that kind of like Rocket League, for example, I think it's going to be a lot more respected because the game is it heavily toxic?
Yeah,
Well,
it's,
is it,
it's
or you
pretty
think it's more
toxic.
toxic than Oh,
I think
but
just
I think
it's the nature of
imagine,
competition. Any
yeah,
competition is going to have a lot of toxicity to it. You have,
but
pretty young people who don't know how to lose, playing for large sums of money. There's going to be a lot of rampant toxicity.
actually, I'm going to add on to that since you mentioned that. Do you coach players about personal stuff. Do you try to actually coach them about like respecting like the opposition, like not losing your head
100%.
and like trying to talk? Like, has that ever happened before? Like a situation that actually happened?
Absolutely.
where you actually had to do that?
One of and from the way I think of playing, um, respecting your opponent is a very large aspect of playing your best game. If you're, writing off your opponent and just joking around, you're gonna open yourself up to getting surprised and upset. So I constantly respecting your opponent and giving them the respect that you should give anybody you're competing against is something that I'm constantly working with players on, even when they're doing a good job of it.
So trying to make sure they keep themselves calm, like not try to get like super toxic and all that. Like
Mm-hmm.
you try to make sure to calm their emotions. I know
Yep.
they're excited and like, but like not try to take it too far.
Yeah. Like, it's one thing, like, you're a competitor, talking yourself up. Like, positive toxicity is a thing. Or it's like, I'm the best player in this lobby. I'm gonna play like I'm the best player in the lobby. These people are worse than me. I'm going to make sure they're aware that they're worse than me. Like, that's not a problem. If you're saying that to yourself. Or you're saying that, to your team in comms, like, oh, we're so much better than these guys. Like, let's just play our game. Let's outpace them. They're slow. They're bad. We can do this. We should win this every time. Um, but limiting that to your team and not vocalizing that in game, on Twitter, to other people outside of your team is very important. As well as making sure it's not reaching past the point of we're better than these people to these people are just like, instead of attacking them, more of keeping it towards a self-comparison zone. Because confidence is a very important factor in competition. So making sure
Yeah,
that,
not.
I mean, if you tell yourself you're better, you're gonna play like you're better. If you play like you're better, you're gonna play with confidence. It's basically all there is to the theory of positive toxicity.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too. I think just make sure, not try to take like, make sure it's treated like a business.
Hmm.
You're just like your work of the business. You could lose your job because of that. So you just want to make sure you don't try to cause toxicity in the work, like the work environment, workplace. Next question I have for you is, this is, I don't know, I'll come up with this too. Do you think that players blame the coaches heavily for their mistakes when their team isn't doing well, instead of the players taking their talent into consideration first, like playing like they're? I'm curious. What do you kind of think about that?
I think a good player-coach relationship, there's an open communication line there where the players would feel comfortable telling a coach, like, hey, I don't think the way you've been working with us is very effective. Let's try to adjust the way this is going so we can start seeing better improvements. Is the responsibility of establishing that line of communication falls on the coach. Um, and I try very hard to make sure that my players know they can hold me accountable for anything, just like I try to hold them accountable. I'm not gonna treat the situation where I'm above them. I view myself just as much as a part of the team as they are. Um, I try to treat them as equals because that's what they are to me. Not any more important to the team than they are. A lot of people come from, traditional sports where the coach is seen as like one of the most prestigious people on the team. I don't subscribe to that philosophy in esports. I don't think it helps the team environment. And so, yeah, I think in a bad player-coach relationship, there would be some players who will blame their coaches for poor performance, and there will be some coaches who purely blame players for poor performances. Um, Neither of those are very effective mentalities to take towards improvement, and I think, especially once you get towards the higher level of play, you stop seeing that mentality, because players they're focused on themselves. They want to improve as much as they can. They're not gonna try to look for excuses.
Um, Are you gonna let me score? No. Damn it. I, I, yeah, I don't know. It just matters on what the situation is, but yeah, you can hold him accountable for that. But there has to be cases where they know, like, if it's gonna come to a situation, you can't blame the coach for doing that, but they don't notice what they're doing wrong. Like, coaches analyze and doing it wrong, they just kind of think they're the bad shots. So, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing this right. They're trying to think they're the better player and all that. That could be a bad case of that, where, yeah, it could turn, it could be bad, it could be harmful, to where, yeah, I'm the yeah, I'm blaming you because we're not doing good overall. Although, you should consider that you're the one playing. Are you guys making mistakes? Are you not listening to me? I think the coaches, it matters, again, trying to make, take accountable. If I, coach is not doing his job right, it feels like it's not effective, although we have this talented team. Yeah, that should be kind of opinionated, and they should try to find someone who does that. But, I don't think it's just kind of right to really, if you like, he's coaching well and you're doing bad, you're treating him right. They blame the coach, although he's doing more dedicated, like, he's more dedicated to helping you guys grow. But again, it matters on what the team is, what the situation is, on how you guys are playing. I don't know. That's kind of all I have to say on that. It's just the coach is kind of like the backbone of the team. Like, as a part of that backbone, it's not one player. It's not one player. It's not two players. It's not the full. It's not one player making this team great. It's everybody.
Mm-hmm. A big philosophy
And
I
the
try
coach
to ingrain
helps you
in
grow.
new
The coach helps you
players
grow.
is win together, lose together. It's never one
Yeah.
individual's fault or success, especially in Rocket League. I know I touched on it earlier. An individual has a massive impact on the game. So while yes, one player can, quote, carry, end quote, um, there's still the responsibility of the other players. If you have a player that's playing, amazing on the day, and they're able to go for a lot of solo plays, they're only going to be able to do that if their teammates are intelligent enough to notice that, respect that, and let them get the space that they need to go for those kinds of things. So you're never really going to have one person that's completely responsible for the outcome of a match, and that stands for any sort of team game. You might have one player that plays really poorly, and they're like, "Oh, this game was completely on my shoulders. It's my fault." And yes, they might have made some crucial mistakes, but there were still probably plenty of things that their teammates could have done to help them either work out of that or cover for those mistakes. Um, Developing that mindset as a competitor is very important in esports because, as we've mentioned countless times already today, a lot of these players are very young. A lot of their exposure to competition has been club-based sports where, you're forced to line up at the end of the match and shake everyone's hand and stuff like that. They're not really exposed to unfiltered competition where no one's making them, thank the other team for the good match. No one's making them, appreciate what the other team did. So you really have to ingrain a sense of team in new players, or they will develop I shouldn't say will, no, everyone's different, but many of them will develop I'm the best player to ever touch this game mentality if they start doing really well.
Yeah, that's right. Last question I have for you as you score this final goal. So you got some goals that game. In the end, what are your plans in regards to coaching in the near future? Like, are you like, are you planning to like help, like, try to get more recognized as a coach, or you just like, what is your plans of, like, regarding your coaching career?
My plan as regards to coaching has always been to help my players do the best that they can do. I'm not really focused on it as a means for myself to gain anything. Um, I always just wanted it to be. I try to develop friendships with all of my players, just so naturally I want them to succeed. Um, Career-wise, I'm trying to move out of coaching, honestly, towards management, just because that's more long-term than coaching is. But while I'm coaching, I just want to do the best I can for my players so they can succeed.
Good. Um, so that's gonna kind of be talking about all about coaching. That's kind of topics. This will be kind of our last game here. The closing topic question I have for you is, if you just like, just this is, I know you're probably not going to become a pro. Well, if you decide to become a Rocket League pro, or if you want, if you decide to become a Rocket League pro, or had the opportunity to coach a professional team, what player would you like to play alongside with?
Hmm. Honestly, if I could pick any player to work with, I would probably say Garrett G. Um, and that's on a basis of a multitude of things. That's just personality-wise. I like his approach to the game. I like his approach to improvement. Um, the way he plays really fits with how I view the game and how I try to steer teams towards playing. I have a lot of respect for the way he plays. I have a lot of respect for him as a person. He's a very mature player. So I think of anyone that comes to mind, he's probably the top of the list.
What actually, if you, what organization would you want to coach? Just curious, like if you wanted to coach organization, would you stick with like NRG or what Garrett G's on? Or would you
Uh,
try to go with different organization? Like what dream org that is currently in the RLCS scene would you want to coach for?
that's currently in RLCS. Probably Rogue, honestly. I've heard a lot of good things about how they treat their players. At least the Rocket League players. I don't know anything about any of their other players, but I assume it follows for their other teams. Um, I don't have anything against Energy. I just have heard more things about Rogue.
I'll kind of give my opinion. So if I decided to become a coach, I think I would want to. I don't know. Like I don't know if you. I think it would be nice to kind of coach Crimsix. I think having philosophy and like he's 33-time world champion in COD. Um, and it would be kind of nice to play with someone who's won the same like mentality of winning a lot of games at a consistent pace. Like he's good. He's always focused and on winning and always wanted to improve the team. Making sure you can win at all costs, even if you have them on championships and you're getting close to like your like retirement. Like he wants to help the future generation, especially especially with all the young players he's been kind of playing with these last 2 years. I think it's a big thing. If I was gonna coach a team, I'm gonna go with the Florida Mutineers. So because I live in Florida, I would love to coach my hometown, my home state team. But again, I'm gonna have to get some more experience in the coaching department to have that chance. One more thing I'm gonna ask you. This is for fun. Since you're a coach, analyze my Rocket League gameplay
Oh man, that's a tough
because
one to
I had
throw at me,
one goal in
being
about 80 minutes.
a lot of that was just due to the way matchmaking works. You're playing against players who put a lot more time into the game than you have. So the pace was a little bit too fast for you. Um, Overall, you had a pretty good idea of spacing yourself away from your teammate. Um, I find a lot of people who haven't played a lot of Rocket League tend to just kind of play it like it's kindergarten soccer and you're just following the ball around in a massive group. Um, you seemed like you had a pretty good idea of, okay, if I'm on the ball doing, small touches that you probably shouldn't be coming up behind me taking the ball off of me. Um, But overall, it's kind of hard for me to give you a whole lot of feedback when I'm seeing you in an echo chamber of three people going twice the speed that you're going. Um, I don't know. It's hard to do
Oh,
that.
it's kind of hard. It's hard to coach a player who has no experience, not a lot of
Yeah,
experience, barely
throw me in
doesn't
a
know how to
high
hit the
level COD
ball.
lobby and you're gonna just see me get shattered left and right. I'm not gonna even see the people killing me. It's not gonna be fun. I might get one
Well,
kill
that's
over
gonna
80
kind
minutes.
of. I got one goal. I like almost had a goal in that. I think 2 games ago, but I got like demolitioned. So thanks for joining me on the show. You're Ryden.
Sure thing,
You're
man.
Ryden. Roden. I don't know how to pronounce the name because it
It's
seems
not a real
really
word. You
odd.
can pronounce it however you want.
You're Roden. Thanks for joining my show. Nice to kind of learn about the Rocket League, um, coaching experience and all about coaching. Do you want to give any shouts before we end the show?
I'm all good.
Oh, okay. Well, that's gonna be it. Bye.